And then I woke up this morning and like my Achilles hurt and my knee hurt and my IT band hurt. And I was like, was I just in Fight Club? Or was it really that 30 minutes on the stair climber? Like, what really caused this? And I'm like, well, let me just pop 3 ibuprofen and get on with life. So, yeah, so we're there this morning. So anyway, we do have a little bit of a plan, but not as much as usual, which is always fun. So so I want to actually start with a couple of things, which is just to, right now the schedule, which I don't see changing, is that I'm here today, and I will be here for the full class. And then the next 2 weekends, and then the weekend of the 14th and the 21st, I will be out. 14th, 15th actually, I'll be doing the Qigong workshop at the Shambhala Center here. So if you have any interest in Qigong, we do have one going on the 14th and 15th. It's a particular style of Qigong that if you're interested in taking a program like that, it's really very wonderful, and it's a progressive level system. This is levels 1 and 2, so it's a weekend. And then the weekend after that, I'll be in Austin visiting friends. So, but then I'll be back, and right now the plan is to be back through the end of the year and not go anywhere for a while. Fingers crossed. So let's begin, as we so often do, by finding a comfortable seat and feeling free to take a moment to wiggle and to try out some different postures before settling into something that creates a sense of dignity and ease in the body. We, in this class, retranslate one of the most famous Yoga Sutras, Sthira Sukha Asanam, which is traditionally translated as the pose is steady and has ease, to the pose is dignified. And dignity being that quality, dual quality of groundedness, which we express through the relative solidity of the legs, the pelvic bowl connecting through the sits bones into the earth, and the legs, the largest bones in the body, feeling in some way, shape, or form grounded into the earth. And then from that groundedness, there's a upliftment through the spine that expresses itself ultimately in a zone of the chest and back that is open without being rigid, and strong without being tense. Sometimes in the Dharma teachings, this quality of the chest is called not becoming a target for arrows. So there's an openness, a broadness, but there's still a sense of aliveness. Feeling the breath flowing in and out, into the nose, out through the nose if it's comfortable to do so. And then taking the hands to the hip crease with the elbows flaring open for the opening bow. Creating, through this gesture, a little bit of upliftment in the spine, again, without rigidity. And we embody that kind of kingly and queenly quality of regalness without distance or coldness. So there's a warmth that radiates from this posture. And on the exhale, inclining the body forward. And coming back up. Releasing the bow. We begin in the first preparatory posture, taking the soles of the feet together for butterfly pose. So soles of the feet connect, and the heels are generously distanced from the pelvis so that we feel a tug in the inner thighs without any sense of sharpness. It's dull and persistent. And then moving ourselves forward in space, finding our way into a nice, easy forward bend. the goal of which is not to create deep and painful sensation, but rather to allow us to experience a deep tug in the body. And we hold this posture for quite a few breaths. These initial poses, if you're newer to the practice, held for about 3 minutes. And each posture is accompanied with 3 points of reflection. So these introductory postures are introduced one posture at a time. So the first one, am I here now? And am I here now draws attention to our ability to become lost in thought, to wander in thought, and then all of a sudden we once again find ourselves on the spot, on the mat, aware of our surroundings. And then we wander off again. Like an inquisitive child, we just kind of wander off mentally. And then we come back. Sometimes that inquisitive child is a very bored and impatient adult, seeking entertainment. So we experience that coming backness, that quality of returning always to the present moment, unforced, but noted. So when we say, am I here now, we're noting our return, because we're often unaware of our leaving. The length of time we hold in these postures allows us to experience the stages of leaving the present moment and coming back multiple times, thereby strengthening our attention to that phenomenon and our resolve to note the return rather than lament the going away. On the physical level, it also helps us to deeply and fully stretch muscles, open up the joints of the body. You'll hear 3 chimes, each of the 3 questions. On the third, we come up. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? Slowly begin to come up. Feeling any tenderness in the spine as we arise and pausing with the spine uplifted. And then releasing the legs, going into our second preparatory posture, we slide onto our abdomen for Sphinx pose. So coming on down to the belly and placing the forearms in front of us parallel with the elbows starting perhaps under the shoulders, and then if we need more sensation, we shift the elbows either closer to the body if they're not quite under the shoulders, or we press the arms straight. And if we need less sensation, we take the elbows forward so as to lower ourselves down while keeping the chest lifted. Finding once again a steadiness, the head and neck relaxed as we gently and persistently stretch and open the low spine. The second question, can I feel what's going on in my body? helps us to differentiate between feeling the quality of the body and thinking about feeling. The difference is that in feeling the body, we are aware of and attuned to the raw sensation arising from our physical form. The feeling in the back, pressure on the elbows and forearms, the texture of whatever is underneath the elbows and forearms, the internal quality of the body, feeling stretches and sensations inside as well as on the surface. And then we note sometimes the shift to analyzing, narrativizing that feeling state. So we feel the quality of the back, for example, in this pose, and we then begin to ask some questions. Well, oh, that's an interesting sensation in my back. I wonder if this pose could potentially hurt me. Has this pose been known to cause back cancer? I wonder what's going on at home. Did I leave the stove on? And so on and so forth. And so we get very quickly wrapped up in our own particular narratives, which, by the way, are fascinating and are in some ways worthy of attention. But for the purposes of this question initially, we're really just noting am I really feeling what's going on, or am I starting to get wrapped up in thoughts about what's going on? We may notice that the qualities of our thoughts are curious. They may also be catastrophizing or analyzing, or any number of things. So we're just trying to note, am I really attending to what's going on? Or am I thinking about what's going on? Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? So please begin to come down slowly. Pause for a moment here, as Sphinx pose can be somewhat intense on the spine, even if you've done it several times. Noticing the quality of the body out of the pose as well as in. And then, if you would please, without changing the position of your head, please roll onto your back. As we take the third preparatory pose, the twist, one to each side. So coming first onto the spine and beginning with the knees bent and the feet flat to the floor. Today we choose to make the left side of the room the side with the pond, the stereo cabinet. And if you have a different left, then we just ask that you play along. So from here, please, with your knees bent and the feet flat on the floor, just drop the knees slowly to the left. And if you find as you drop the knees that there's too much sensation, just lift your top leg, your right leg, a little bit off of the bottom leg. And if you need more sensation, you can take your bottom left ankle and hook it the outside of your upper leg, your right leg. This will create more leverage and torque in the spine. And then, if you'd like, you can raise the right arm up. The arm opposite the side knees are going. To allow the stretch to distribute itself across the whole of the spine from the lower part of the back up to the armpit. Our third question, can I relax? is intended to help us notice that grasping. So in the first question, we find ourselves back in the present moment, which is the place in which we can actually feel the quality of the body. We can feel the quality of the body, and then we note if we can really stay connected to its rawness, to the rawness of the moment, or if we are immediately captured in thought. And that presence of thought is thought of as grasping. And so we encourage ourselves to relax, to open up that grasping a bit. So while we continue to feel, we don't cling to it. Noticing that in clinging to the sensation, we oftentimes are attempting to make it more permanent, to last longer than the actual duration of the feeling. And that concretizing, that grasping can occur for many reasons. And although the reasons are not important, we can of course note the ones that are most common for us. But regardless of reason, we just want to notice the tendency and to try and relax it. To relax the desire to either push away or to hold on to certain feelings, certain moments, certain ways of being. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? So please slowly unwind, come back to center, and take a moment to stretch and release your spine. Twisting being one of the sort of most challenging positions of the body because it affects so much throughout the entirety of the spine. So we take a moment to stabilize. And then we'll take the other side. So please bring your feet once again flat to the floor. And shifting over now to our collective right, taking modification so as to allow the twist to be sustainable and potentially raising the left arm. So as to distribute the twist into the whole of the spine up into the armpit. In addition to the 3 questions, we also use in this class 2 other pillars, which is the thought processes and energetics behind traditional Chinese medicine and the philosophical teachings of Buddhism, which we attempt to do in the 3rd one without any kind of dogmatism. So setting the foundation of the practice with the 3 questions is really about, regardless of what we do or what we pay attention to for the rest of class, that we continuously note whether we are here and present whether we can feel what's going on in the body, and whether we can relax. And Am I Here Now really just calls attention to our level of, or rather gives us confidence in our ability to return from distraction. Can I Feel gives us call to recognize the rightness and fullness of experience that arises from the body. Can I Relax makes us notice the tendencies we have to try and make more permanent certain things than they truly are. As I said, we came into class today with no plan. But just to take a moment before we begin to remind ourselves that through the classes that we've been working through together, we've been looking at this Lojong slogan, this mind training slogan from Tibetan Buddhism. The slogan being, drive all blames into one. And we've been exploring this teaching in terms of the desire to become a kind of gifted general of our own life, gifted commander of our own life. Becoming prepared rather than paranoid, and understanding that all of our suffering derives from a single point, which is our own rigidity and inflexibility, our own over-concern for ourselves. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? And so slowly come back to center, please. Take a moment to stretch and release. As we shift into the main postures of the practice now, we'll begin to hold these postures for 5 minutes. And at minute 4, you'll hear a chime indicating that there's a minute left, and if you wish to deepen your practice, your work in the posture, then you may feel free to do so. But please note that deepening in this case does not mean becoming aggressive and pushing the sensation in the posture to an edge of intensity that means you're gritting your way through the last minute. So if you would please, come on up to seated. We'll take our first posture, which is a variation on the poses that we've been working with in the drive all blames into one sequence, which is the liver and gallbladder. So we're going to work with the energy of pigeon today, in the first pose. So a couple of options. For some of us, the first option will be drawing the right leg parallel with the front edge of our mat. We'll take the left leg and stack it on top for what is often called square pose or double pigeon. Twice the fun. For some, rather than taking double pigeon, we instead begin with the left ankle crossing on the right thigh like so, with the knee slightly bent. And we rest back on the hands. And then we begin to draw that foot in and take seated pigeon, like so. if neither of these postures is sustainable for you because of either knee or hip concerns, then please take a very effective but easier pose on the body by crossing the left leg in front of the right and simply fold over in easy forward bend. So
does our right leg go on top of the left if we're doing the...
So the right leg is in front, so the left leg is on top.
On top.
Yep.
Okay.
So it's left leg on top, right leg on bottom. For double pigeon or shoelace, or sorry, a square pose. Or here, or left leg in front, coming down into easy seated pose. So please choose your relative level of suffering. And if you're in square pose, you're welcome to bring the weight of the body forward here to increase sensation. In this practice with the body, we are working with and on what are called the liver and gallbladder channels. And in traditional Chinese medicine, the liver and gallbladder are considered organs like their Western counterparts, but are also have or also contain different qualities. And the liver and gallbladder are called the general and the captain of the army, collectively. And when the liver and gallbladder channels are clear, we experience not only healthy boundaries in ourselves, but also an ability to elegantly and efficiently achieve the goals that we set for ourselves. So on the physical level, this practice mirrors the thematics that we are working with, which is the idea of how do we shift from a paranoia about the world to a preparedness. And in a way that preparedness does not look like, or our life under preparedness doesn't look like we're always living in a panic room. That creates paranoia and grasping. Instead, we find that balance point between what is controllable and what is uncontrollable. And find that life becomes more workable by virtue of our preparedness. Situations become less debilitating when they arise. On a physical level, and why we are doing these poses, the liver and gallbladder channels flow on opposite sides of the legs. The gallbladder on the outside, the liver on the inside, flowing up into the body. The liver to the midline, and then the gallbladder up through the side of the body, through the neck, through the crown, and into the eye. In writing about this, Ted Kapchik, the author of The Web That Has No Weaver, talks about gallbladder as this organ that creates bile, which is the thing that emulsifies fats in the diet. But that the quality and clarity of this bile represents and is mirrored by the clarity and sort of clearness of the eye, the physical eye. And when the eye is clear, our vision is vast. When the eye is cloudy, our vision is reduced. So the gallbladder creating the vision, the sight, the liver providing the kind of impetus, the energy. It's the 1 minute chime. As a note, it's not uncommon to be bored in this class. When I'm at home practicing these sequences, oftentimes I become incredibly bored, even with myself, which is kind of funny. The point being, though, is that this boredom is useful, and we want to differentiate between cool and hot boredom. Hot boredom is the boredom that is agitated and seeking to be entertained. And cool boredom is the quality of sitting and recognizing that you're bored but not feeling agitated enough to need to change it. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? So please unwind, pause and stretch out your legs. You may find yourself feeling a little bit restricted, and so feeling free to move around a little bit, or to choose a different expression on the other side. And now, for double pigeon, the left leg is now drawn across, and the right leg is on top. In seated pigeon, the right leg is crossed over. And in easy seated pose, the right leg is crossed in front. So finding our way into a sustainable experience of this posture. Again, if you find that you're in square pose, you can always lean forward to create more sensation. So today, in a slight diversion from our usual work, I wanted to share with you an awareness that I came to after watching Disney Pixar's Inside Out. Has anyone seen this movie? Yeah, it's phenomenal. So I'm going to spoil it for all of you by including it in my talk, but the point is that even after you know everything that happens, you need to go see it. In fact, if necessary, you can leave now.
Showing right now.
It's showing right now, right next door actually. Just run into April's room and say, "I heard there was a movie." So, and the reason why I'm sharing this is because part of the reason that I've been out quite a bit is because of my own sort of training and deepening of my practice in Shambhala Buddhist meditation. And part of as a side note, part of the struggle that we often experience as students of systems is balancing our worldly commitments with the desire to constantly be studying, being at workshops, which is great until you realize, all the plants are dead, and your partner has left you along with your pets. And then the real practice begins, right? And then all of that spirituality really rubber hits the road. Anyway, so in Shambhala, and this is no secret because it's in several of the books that are published on this system of Buddhism. Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche in his book Shambhala, Sacred Path of the Warrior, many of the things printed, written by Pema Chodron, senior teacher in the lineage, the current lineage holder, Sakyong Mipham Rinpoche, as well as several public talks, is that in Shambhala we often talk about the idea of sadness. This idea of being broken-hearted. Which kind of nicely plays into the general depressive view that most people have of Buddhism. Right? First realization, everything is suffering. Second realization, we should get some drinks. So Buddhism gets a really great rap because it's, super depressing. And then in order to solve it, we just sit. Life sucks. Let's sit about it. It's true, though. Anyone who recently went through the level 1 training that we had, and some people did in this room, it's like, are we just going to sit here? Yep. 1 minute. But this sadness quality is so predominant in Shambhala Buddhism that it really requires some deep thought, because realistically we're called to sort of experience our emotions and then underneath that discover a kind of essential sadness that seems to underlie all of our experience. And that's, a little bit of a challenge in the sense that sadness is one of the emotions that we often find least productive, least helpful. We spend a lot of money and time avoiding being sad. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? So coming out of pigeon pose, its variations, stretching and releasing, finding some fluidity and openness in the hip. And then, for the next posture, for Sphinx or Seal, aka Cobra pose, let's come down once again onto our abdomens. And as we come down onto our abdomens, feeling free if we have a sensitive spine, one that just cries at the drop of a hat, sensitive spine. Oh, spine, you're so sensitive. So the elbows can start under the shoulders, but if you'd like to work more deeply into the spine, you can turn the fingers out. We do this to open up the shoulders and begin to walk the hands back a bit towards the body, thereby creating a higher posture. Again, without overstressing the low back. And relaxing the head as well, so you're not finding tension in the neck. The legs can widen so as to create more space in the sacrum, which will create less congestion, more openness, typically in the low back. So we spend a lot of time, as I was saying, avoiding sadness. And so in the movie Inside Out, one of the arcs of this story is about a young girl named Riley who grows up in Minnesota and whose father is transferred to San Francisco. And Riley's experience of that move from Minnesota, this unexpected move, from Minnesota to San Francisco. And the arc of her relationship to that move and to her family. But the interesting twist for the movie is that it is mostly experienced in Riley's head, hence the title Inside Out. And so inside Riley's head are three key emotions: fear, sadness, joy, anger, and disgust. Each played by a different character, voiced in joy by Amy Poehler from Parks and Rec and Saturday Night Live. Mindy Kahn, who many of you may know from the Mindy Show, is disgust, who is kind of always just put off by everything. And so we see kind of inside Riley's head these 5 characters trying to help Riley navigate experience. So Joy, who is essentially a kind of Miley Cyrus-esque Tinkerbell, is sort of attempts to be the most dominant character inside Riley's head, and all the other emotions kind of look to Joy for kind of guidance, with sadness being the sort of odd person out in this quintet. And Pixar does a really wonderful job with all their movies, but in this case they do something really wonderful, which is they show the inside of her head, and she has Riley's head, and she has memories. And each memory is kind of color-coded based on what is the predominant emotion. So most of her memories are this kind of goldish hue, which represents joy. Only a few are red, anger, purple, fear, green, disgust. Almost none, perhaps 0 when the movie starts, are sad or blue. And then in her mind, in this mind space, in headquarters, as they call it, there are a set of what are called core memories, and these core memories are formative moments in Riley's life, all of which, when the movie starts, are gold. So all of Riley's memories as a child are really, all of her core memories are about experiencing joy, a moment of joy with a friend, a moment of joy in learning how to skate or play hockey, being a goofball, learning the value of honesty. So up into this move, really all of Riley's life is defined by joy's sort of main role. And if you watch it closely, you'll also notice that Joy is a little bit overbearing. Joy always feels like she should be the one helping to control and set the tone for Riley's experience. 1 minute. And of course, we might also recognize that in terms of that joy, or the importance of joy, is often really highlighted. That joy is the first thing we should lead with. In yoga, for example, we often talk about the principle of enlightenment in terms of its Sanskrit term, which is ananda, or ananda. And oftentimes that's translated as bliss or joy. So we look at the highest achievement within spiritual practice as kind of a joyfulness. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? So please slowly come down and out. Relax for a moment, allow your spine to settle. And now, pressing ourselves up, let's once again swing into seated for shoelace. Shoelace, also called cow's face pose in traditional Hatha Yoga, Gomukhasana. So for this posture, we'll start by taking our right legs and shift the heel towards the buttock. So as you're entering the pose, you can sink onto your right hip and sort of sink back onto the left. And then as you can see, I've kind of started with this odd shape where my left knee is just sitting here. And then depending upon our individual bodies, we'll begin to shift this left foot over to the right hip. And you might scooch a little bit to try and stack those knees. Now, this is an intensive pose for the hip. So if you find that it's too much, then please just allow the hip to sink and just relax here. Again, the posture is facilitating a sensation, not a mandated position for your body. So you're finding somewhere between here and just falling apart. And then slowly, if you'd like, coming forward and really just appreciating the fact that that hip is not falling out of its socket. And just be grateful for those ligaments and tendons that are holding everything together. And just relax. And again, modulating your sensation so that this is a dull ache, not a sharp pain. So all of us have to take the time and awareness to feel the posture. And this is where, just as a side note, as we experience this pose, this is where the 3 questions come in a very simple ways. Am I cheating myself of experience by simply enduring what's going on in this posture, distracting myself? Or am I really setting myself up for the ability to stay present with the sensations in my body? So joy is really very dominant. And then Riley, at the age of 11, moves to San Francisco in this upheaval. All 5 emotions kind of recognize it. And joy, attempting to maintain a kind of status quo, does her best to continue to infuse Riley's experience with the element of joy, for her to recalibrate all of her experience through that lens. And we see this in the way in which Riley's parents, mom and dad, interact with Riley, asking her to be their cheerful girl while they go through this transition, and the moving truck doesn't show up, and the house in San Francisco is, probably $750,000, and it's basically the size of a postage stamp and has dead rats. But that's San Francisco real estate for you. We'll put up with a minor scorpion or black widow infestation here in Arizona, but that house better not cost any more than $125,000. So of course, Riley, and through the lens of joy, is attempting to really experience this as a kind of excitement, using this excitement and her own joy as a way to hold the family together in some way. Or to rather not, maybe in another way of saying it, not be an additional problem. But in a couple of experiences, for example, Riley is introducing herself at her new school. Riley's introducing herself, and all of a sudden things turn blue on the screen of Riley's mind, which is where the emotions are watching everything that goes on. And she starts crying in front of this class because of leaving Minnesota and missing her friends. And what happens is that sadness touched something, and now the experience is being colored by sadness. And of course, everyone is so angry with sadness. Why are you doing this? This is disgust is horrified because now Riley's crying in front of the cool girls. And fear's annoyed that, people are going to not like her. And anger, of course, is, just angry. And so the struggle in the movie becomes the struggle between sadness and joy, in particular when sadness and joy are sucked out of Riley's mind due to some things that don't make any sense unless you're watching the movie. And now all of a sudden Riley's mind is only being managed by fear, disgust, and anger, while joy and sadness attempt to make it back to Riley's head. And I think you can kind of imagine what an 11-year-old who's been transplanted from Minnesota to San Francisco looks and feels like when she's being managed by anger, disgust, and fear. It's not pretty. 1 minute. And so the journey, although we watch Riley, the main character, when she's being managed by disgust, anger, and fear, becoming more and more distant from her family and her old friends in Minnesota, and more bitter about the move, until collectively they kind of put it in Riley's head, as it were, anger, fear, and disgust, to run away. Meanwhile, joy and sadness are kind of running around Riley's memory banks, trying to find a way back in. A way back into Riley's head so they can, at least from Joy's perspective, fix the problem, as sadness sort of goes through these whole sort of drama of kind of feeling herself to be useless in terms of Riley's experience. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? Unwinding, please. And stretching out. Make sure the hips still work. Before we take the other side. So when you're ready, take the left leg under the right leg on top. Be prepared for differences between the two sides. However you express it, so many different sort of ways of doing this. And then when you're ready, starting to fold over. If you'd like. Or just staying upright. So eventually joy and sadness get separated, and joy ends up in what's kind of like the memory pit, where those things we can't find in our head go and eventually evaporate. And in this pit, joy finds a memory of the time when Riley, back home in Minnesota, missed a goal and therefore lost the game for her team. And when Joy picks up the memory, it's golden, because she's remembering a segment of that experience where the team comes to her and kind of congratulates her on a game well done and throws her on their shoulders, celebrates her, and a game well played. But in these spheres that represent the memories, they can be sort of swiped back and forth to reverse and fast forward them. And so Joy swipes back and she notes that the color of the sphere starts turning blue. And it's the part of the memory where Riley is sitting on a tree branch by herself, sad that she lost the game for her team, and her mom and dad come over to comfort her. And then the team comes over and comforts her by celebrating her. And Joy has this epiphany, which is that what awakens joy is sadness. That it was Riley's sadness that awoke the potential for others to respond to her. And that by experiencing sadness, that Riley was therefore capable of experiencing joy. And of course, in sort of Disney fable fashion, Joy reconnects with sadness, and they rush back to headquarters just at this moment where Riley, having gotten on a bus to go back to Minnesota, is just about to get on the Bay Bridge. And in headquarters, there's a control board that kind of represents the ability of her 5 emotions to interact with her. And the board, as she gets on the bus and starts to darken, meaning that, of course, that she's sort of losing the ability to feel. And when joy and sadness arrive back, everyone turns to Joy to ask her to fix it, and Joy turns to sadness and says, "Sadness, it's up to you." And so sadness reactivates Riley's potential to feel. And she runs home, and she goes to her mom and dad, and what happens next is that Joy, which has been trying to protect these core memories, the whole premise of why they're out of the head has to do with these core memories of Riley's childhood. And she hands these memories to sadness, and all the memories start to turn blue, and what happens is that Riley begins to cry in front of her parents, and she tells them, "I know you want me to be happy, but I miss home." And in that moment, which, as a child, you're like, "Oh, that's sad," and as an adult, you're like bawling. Because you're like, I get it. All of a sudden, that sadness that Riley feels opens up this rich experience, this rich interaction between her and her family. And then, in what is the sort of most beautiful moment, most beautiful recognition of the movie, is that then both sadness and joy kind of, as she's embraced in this hug by her parents, touch the console together, and so now she produces a core memory that is a blend of sadness and joy. And so the poignant part of this for perhaps adults or those who are aware of this interplay is that we recognize that moment in our own lives where sadness had to enter in, where we went from being mostly unconcerned about what was going on in our lives and maybe focusing on always being happy to having something that really jolted us. And that this sadness, this moment of sadness, was really transformative, but also, in many ways, awoke a new way of experiencing the world, a richness that did not exist before. Because we had the potential to realize that life can be broken. But that just because life can be broken doesn't mean that it's wrong. I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? Let's unwind. Stretch out. Opening up here. And then for our second to last pose, before we come onto our backs, let's come into whatever version of a wide-legged forward bend we can. Working out with our neighbors as needed. And bending the knees if we have a sensitive set of hamstrings or a deeply tight body in this zone. We can use the hands behind us to create length. But finding our way forward, even a little bit. Softening into the forward bend. So this moment in Riley's life where she experiences really the nuanced beauty of joy and sorrow, of the idea of the inescapability of loss, and yet the gift of losing. That this is really what, in many ways, on reflection, that the Shambhala path is really pointing us to. That underlying all things is sadness, but that sadness is an opening into a deep and powerful appreciation for life itself. That we enjoy life not in spite of its brokenness, but because it can be broken. And the movie ends, this kind of deep recognition that all five of these emotions work together to create experience. Unfortunately for the emotions and for us, it ends right before Riley goes through puberty. You can see what Inside Out 2 is going to be all about. But of course, in each human life, that awareness of joy and sorrow happens at different times. For some, the sorrow comes very early, and for others a little later. But inevitably we experience loss. And we can experience loss in life as something that we seek to push away because we've conditioned ourselves to believe that somehow feeling that and feeling that sadness deeply is a mistake. Or we can view it as an experience that enriches our own joy in life. That, of course, is a key trick, and one that many spiritual traditions, including Shambhala, can guide us to. but needless to say, it is by understanding this role of sorrow as a kind of gateway to joy that is perhaps one of the most profound teachings. As you come out of your forward bend, slowly coming up, pause, the spine long for a moment, and then shifting the legs back to center and taking a relaxed posture, either on your spine or on your side, or even on your abdomen, whatever way it is that you naturally are called to rest your body. So perhaps closing this particular session with the last paragraph from Chapter 3 of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche's Shambhala, the Sacred Path of the Warrior, a chapter that's entitled The Genuine Heart of Sadness. He writes, "The genuine heart of sadness comes from a feeling that your heart is full. You would like to give your heart to others. For the warrior, this experience of sad and tender heart is what gives birth to fearlessness. Conventionally, being fearless means that you are not afraid, or that if someone hits you, you will hit them back. However, we are not talking about that street fighter level of fearlessness. Real fearlessness is the product of tenderness. It comes from letting the world tickle your heart, your raw and beautiful heart. You are willing to open up without resistance or shyness and face the world. You are willing to share your heart with others. So beginning to slowly move your body, preparing it to eventually and slowly rise to seated. Taking your time with this journey. And as you settle in a seated posture, feeling the ground of the legs, the rising of the spine, feeling dignified and open. And taking the hands to the hip crease for the closing bow. We end with the aspiration, remembering that we repeat these internally to ourselves so that we can express these three levels. I may experience happiness, that you, that all beings. For each one a chime, and on the third chime a bow. May I experience happiness and the root of happiness. May you experience happiness and the root of happiness. May all beings everywhere experience happiness and the root of happiness.